Hello, beloved of the Lord. My friend used to call me that. Beloved. And I liked it. Well, she still does call me that. I just don't see her as often. And God is no respecter of persons. So if I'm His beloved, then you're His beloved. Our Bible does tell us that God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever would believe in Him should have everlasting life. So, yeah, that's a good way to start, I think. I would like just to do a quick update. It is March 14th, 2018, Wednesday. Last Friday, I posted offerings part 1. And I mentioned that I was going to try and do a video each day. Obviously, that hasn't happened. Apparently, that was my idea. I am becoming more and more aware of my own weakness, and that I can do nothing apart from the Lord. And unless He's working in me and giving me the strength and insight and revelation that I need, I'm not going to be able to do anything. So, sorry, I didn't put a video out like I was planning. I did record one yesterday morning and at 4:40 in the morning. But I'm not feeling that I am to post it at this point, so we have that on hold. Alright, I just want to catch you up as to what's been happening with me quickly. On Friday, I did mention on Offerings 1 that I had a very intimate time with the Lord in the morning, emotional time, where I was reliving the past, plus He was giving me new revelation. So that was a sweet time, and then in the afternoon, I recorded Offerings 1. Then I was done emotionally. And Saturday was a rest day, and the Lord ministered to me directly and also through my husband, and it was just a very sweet time and a good day of rest. Sunday I was thinking I might do Offerings 2, and no, that was not God's plan. Instead, I felt to do a word study on the word punish. So I went to get a blood test, and while I was there, I had my Bible app, and I went on the concordance and looked up the word punish. And it brought up quite a few verses, mostly from the Old Testament. In Jeremiah, there were 15 verses. Isaiah had 5. Hosea had 3. About God, the Lord shall punish. And this is something He's been stirring up in me, because what we're moving into is going to lead us into a fuller understanding of God as our Father. Alright, so I looked up those verses and read them, and then I came home. I closed up my phone and came home. When I opened it again, there was a verse there that did not have the word punish in it, but I felt to pay attention to it. The verse is 2 Corinthians 13, from 2 Corinthians 13. And so I would just like to read part of that. All right, this will be my 3rd visit to you. This is Paul speaking to the Corinthians. He's writing his letter to the Corinthians. Every matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. I already gave you a warning when I was with you the second time. I now repeat it while absent. On my return, I will not spare those who sinned earlier or any of the others. I will not spare them. Since you are demanding proof that Christ is speaking through me, he is not weak in dealing with you, but is powerful among you. For to be sure, he was crucified in weakness, yet he lives by God's power. Likewise, we are weak in him, yet by God's power we will live with him to serve you. That section of Scripture highlights the apostles' authority to bring rebuke and correction, even punishment, to the Lord's people. And the Lord has been helping me to understand, and I just want to put that out there because I think it's important that we all realize that along with his glory, which is increasing, his light is increasing, and his blessings are going to increase, the healings are going to increase, all those good things. But also what's going to increase is exposure of sin, which is what we want. That's what the Lord's been working in me, showing me. He's increasing his light and he exposed his sin in me. And that's wonderful because I want to get rid of that. Because it was affecting my relationship with my husband. And so I'm very thankful for that. But he's also bringing an aspect of his character that we are for the most part really not used to. And that is his discipline and his rod of correction and punishment. All right, so he's been bringing some verses to my mind. I would like to look at Malachi 4:6. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. It's the section of Scripture where it talks about Elijah returning. Sorry, just Malachi. All right, 4:6. Let's start with 5. See, I will send you the prophet Elijah before that great and dreadful day of the Lord. Before it comes, he will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, or else I will come and strike the land with a curse. Now, I've heard that verse referred to a number of times. But I believe that now it's beginning. God is beginning to release authority. And for us, it's starting in our home. But it will expand. His authority will expand and it will reach to the church as a whole. And so things are shifting. I think that's what I wanted to say. In my home, things are shifting. And I almost feel the picture that I have is that my feet are on shifting sand. And the sand is shifting and receding. And for me, I just need to keep my balance. I need to keep focused on the Lord and just, press into him. And the sand is shifting and receding until my feet will be planted on solid bedrock. The Lord does say he's going to shake everything that can be shaken. And any sand in our lives will be shaken and removed out of the way. And we will be established on bedrock. So that's a good thing. All right, and I wanted to just look at some verses in the Bible. I'm just quickly trying to find my notes on this. Okay, about true sons. True sons should expect to be disciplined. All right? And our Bible tells us that, in fact, if you're not disciplined, then you're not a true son. So that should be a scary thing. All right, so we're going to go to Proverbs 3. Proverbs 3 is one of my very favorite chapters. It is so full of wisdom. All right, so Proverbs 3, 11 and 12, we'll just read that. It says, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in." So these are aspects of God's fatherhood that he is revealing and is going to increasingly reveal to us. We also have a verse that says, "Behold both the kindness and severity of the Lord." Because he's just, and because he loves us, he must bring correction. We need it. King David said he delights in the Lord's rod and his staff. He's comforted by them. And the rod is his way of bringing correction to us. All right. Now, where do I want to go from here? All right. I think that's good for that. I think we've established that good fathers bring correction to their children, and the Lord is going to be doing that with us. It's a good thing. It's for healing. It will open the way for all the blessings that he wants to bring to us. So, it's a good thing. Now, this morning I woke up. I had a dream just before I woke up, and it was very profound, and I would like to share it with you. Perhaps some of you can relate to it. My husband can. And it helps me to understand what he's going through and what many of God's sons are going through at this point. All right, so in this dream, I was on a ranch. The rancher had a wife and they had a garden. The wife was very generous. And when I accidentally said I needed something, and she thought that it was her prized cauliflower that they had been admiring, she immediately got up and broke it apart and gave me a piece that I could plant in my garden. I don't really know if that's how cauliflowers can grow, but that was her generosity. And so I was grateful for that. And then we went out to the barn, and I was given like a massive hunk of meat, like, beef or something like beef. And I decided to put it down a chute that led to a grinder, and I was going to get it ground up. And then I changed my mind at the last moment, and I went to grab it out. And it was so important to me that I got this out of the grinder before it got ground up. I needed it in a chunk for some reason. I don't know why. So fortunately, the chute was disconnected from the grinder, and I was able to get the entire piece of meat out. And I went to the rancher and I said, "Look, my meat didn't get ground up." And I was so thankful to have my meat. And he looked at me, and then he kind of signaled me, or I just knew that I was to follow him. And he was going to show me where the meat came from. So we went outside. And we walked out into the yard, and there was a horse there. And this horse had been completely skinned alive. And somehow I knew that the skin had been taken off in one piece. It was not something the rancher enjoyed doing. He was a very kind man. In fact, I need to say that he had mentioned that he didn't want to get any more dogs because he felt so badly when they got old and, they had to suffer. They suffered before they died and all that they had to go through. And he had a real tender heart, a really tender heart. But I understood that it was necessary for that skin to be removed from the animal live because it had a different quality than the skin removed from a dead animal. And the person that was buying the skin insisted that it be taken off a live animal. And the rancher needed the full redemption of that skin. He needed the full value of that skin. And so he was forced to remove the skin from the animal alive. So now this horse was just standing there with, you could see its muscles and everything, and there was just this thin layer of thin, something, see-through material there over its muscles. And he went up, and the horse just stood there, and I could feel that it was like stinging all over, that it was in pain. And yet its face and its eyes were so pure, just so trusting and so accepting. And the rancher went up and patted him on his head. And I could tell that the horse loved the rancher and received that touch of affection, and somehow didn't seem to feel any pain associated with it. And then the rancher walked by him, and the horse turned around and followed him and just stood near him, just to be close. And then the rancher came to a decision that it was time. And so he walked across the yard to another area, and the horse followed him. And then the horse curled up at his feet and just leaned on him, just wanted to be close. And then there was another horse with the skin on and everything who came, and the rancher had trained it. And I saw that it was time for this animal to be sacrificed or to be killed. And the horse with the skin on, who had been trained, leaned over and put its head on top. So, the skinned horse was now lying on its side. The rancher had put him down onto his side. The other horse came and put its head right on his shoulder to comfort him and to help the rancher with what needed to be done. And then the rancher got on top of the horse, on his shoulder or the upper neck. And he leaned over and grabbed the head. And somehow in my mind I have a picture of a rod. I'm not sure if I saw it or knew it was there or what, but it was around on the other side of the head so he could pull the head up. And then he brought tremendous pressure to bear down on that horse's shoulder. And the horse that helped also pushed down with all its might. And it was superhuman. It was powerful pressure down to hold the horse still for this one last thing that had to happen. And so I saw him take the head, and he started to pull, and I saw that he was going to break its neck. And his face was resolute, and he knew that this must happen. There was no pleasure in it. And he started to pull on this neck. And it's a horse's neck. It's very, very strong. But he had to, and he was doing it with all his might. And I couldn't watch anymore. I turned away and I just started to pray, oh God, let it be over soon. And then I woke up. It was so real. It was so real. And I shared it with my husband. And he said, I don't know if it's for me, he said, but I can relate to that horse. It had to be done. And the sooner it's over, the better. And I believe that there's others that are going through this process. It relates to the bringing us to the end of ourself. If you haven't watched that video, you can go back. I had a revelation concerning that. And interestingly enough, it also relates to something in this online e-magazine that I get. I'm just going to hold it up. It's called Our Finest Hour. It's from Neville Johnson's ministry, Living Word Academy, a Living Word Academy of Light publication. You can get these for free. You just go onto the website. I think it's Academy of Light is the website, or yeah, if you go to Academy of Light, you should be able to get there. And you can sign up for this free online newsletter that comes out. It's many of the world's top prophets make submissions to it, and they're every month it's different. They have different prophets submitting words and articles. It's extremely good. I highly recommend it if you're interested in hearing these prophetic words that God is putting out. So one of the articles in this particular magazine, I'll just tell you if you want to go and read the whole thing. It's Volume 2, Issue 2. And the title is War and Glory by Rick Joyner. The reason I really put a lot of credence in this particular article is because it matches exactly a word that a friend of ours, a very prophetic friend of ours, shared with us that she got many, many years ago when my husband and I were first married. And she had a dream or a vision. Maybe it was a vision. In this vision, there was an island. And around the island, there were many ships with people on the ships. On the island, there were many structures, buildings, and such. And there were lights. There were lights all over the island. Some were in the buildings and some were out of the buildings. And then there were some lights on the ships as well. But the lights on the ships would not come onto the island because they were afraid of the structures. Sorry, something's happening with the picture here. Oh well. Just ignore that. Something was happening. They were afraid of the structures. And then all of a sudden, the island began to submerge. And it went down and was completely covered in water. And when it came back up again, there were no buildings, no structures, just lights on the island. And then the people on the boats felt safe to come onto the island. Now, this word from Rick Joyner is exactly the same, except it's an expanded version and there's more detail and, more information. But when I saw that story, it was like, yeah, this is definitely from the Lord. So one section of this article that Rick Joyner wrote talks about the cemetery. So there's a cemetery on the island. And I'm just going to read that short section. So when each ship arrived, the people on it were led straight to the Lord. He looked into the eyes of each one and said, "If you trust me, you will die for me." When one said, "I will die for you," he immediately thrust his sword right through his heart. This caused very real pain. Sorry, I'm going to just take the clip off here. To those who tried to avoid the sword, it was obviously even more painful. To those who relaxed, it did not seem to hurt as much. They were then taken to a cemetery with the words "obscurity" over the gate. I felt compelled to follow them. Those who had been stabbed were checked to see that they were really dead before they were buried. Some clung to life for a long time and were laid off to one side. Quickly, those who were buried began to arise as lights, just like those who had survived the storm. I noticed that they were not staying in their tombs the same length of time. Some of them arose before those who were clinging to life were even buried. Okay. Well, when I first looked at this cemetery, it looked like a dreadful place, and I did not think that it fit at all into this now glorious island. As I left the cemetery, I turned back to look at it, and it looked beautiful. I could not figure out what was different, when one of the workers said to me knowingly, "The cemetery has not changed. You have." There are some very precious, beautiful horses who are coming to the end of their suffering. And I believe that they too will be like these ones who were willing to be stabbed by the Lord, to die for Him. They will be buried, and then they will be resurrected as lights, ready to serve and minister on the earth. So, that's my message for today. Thank you for letting me share. God bless you. And if you are going through this process, God is with you. He's going to bring you to the fulfillment of it. He who has begun a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. God bless you. Love you. Talk to you soon.